This is the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a village near a big forest. Her grandmother had made her a beautiful red cloak with a big red hood, which she wore every time she went outside. And so everyone in the village called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Little Red Riding Hood's mother said,
"Grandma isn't feeling very well. Will you take this basket of food through the forest to her cottage?"
Yes, Mother.
said Little Red Riding Hood.
I sure would love to see Grandma.
She put on her red cloak and she pulled up her red hood and she took the basket of food into the forest.
Remember,
Her mother called after her.
don't talk to any strangers along the way.
I won't.
Little Red Riding Hood promised, and she skipped down the path and into the woods. Little Red Riding Hood did not have to worry about getting lost in the forest because she knew the way to Grandma's house very well. But along the way, she saw some beautiful wild flowers growing near the path.
I bet Grandma would really love these.
She said to herself, and she stopped to pick a few.
Hello, little girl,
Said a deep growling voice from behind her. Little Red Riding Hood was very startled. She spun around and saw a big bad wolf standing in the shadows between two trees.
Hello.
Said Little Red Riding Hood. She didn't know that the wolf was bad, and she had already forgotten her mother's words about talking to strangers.
Where are you going on this fine day?
Asked the big bad wolf.
I'm going to my Grandma's cottage on the other side of the forest.
Said Little Red Riding Hood.
She isn't feeling very well, so I'm bringing her this basket of food and these flowers.
What a sweet girl you are.
Said the big bad wolf. He smiled and showed his mouthful of sharp teeth. The big bad wolf was quite hungry, and he was not interested in the basket of food.
I had better be going.
Said Little Red Riding Hood,
Bye.
and she skipped off down the path. The big bad wolf's stomach grumbled and growled with hunger, and suddenly he had an idea. As quick as he could, he ran through the forest all the way to Grandma's cottage. The sneaky wolf opened the door very quietly and found Grandma asleep in her bed. He picked up the old woman, opened his great big mouth, and he swallowed poor Grandma in one gulp. Then the big bad wolf climbed into the bed and pulled the blanket up to his chin. He put on Grandma's glasses and her nightcap, and he waited for the little girl to arrive with her flowers and basket of food. When Little Red Riding Hood arrived at the cottage, she opened the door quietly and found Grandma lying in bed.
Hello, Grandma.
She said,
Mother told me you weren't feeling well, so I brought some food and some flowers. Do you like them?
What a sweet little girl you are.
said the wolf in his fake grandma voice.
Come closer, my dear.
Little Red Riding Hood took a step closer and she noticed that something looked a little different about Grandma.
My,
She said,
what big eyes you have, Grandma.
All the better to see you with.
said the big bad wolf.
Come closer, my dear.
Little Red Riding Hood took another step closer to the bed.
My,
She said,
what big ears you have, Grandma.
All the better to hear you with.
replied the wolf.
Come closer, my dear.
Little Red Riding Hood took one more step closer.
My, what big teeth you have, Grandma.
She said in surprise.
All the better to eat you with.
Growled the big bad wolf. He jumped out of the bed, and as he opened his great big mouth, Little Red Riding Hood shrieked and tried to run, but the hungry wolf grabbed her up and swallowed Little Red Riding Hood in just one gulp. Outside the cottage, a woodsman happened to be walking through the forest when he heard Little Red Riding Hood's shriek of surprise. He hurried inside and he saw the wolf with his huge round belly. The woodsman grabbed the big bad wolf, turned him upside down, and shook him by his feet. Little Red Riding Hood came tumbling out of the wolf's mouth, and Grandma followed. The three of them chased the big bad wolf out of the cottage, out of the forest, and over the hill. The big bad wolf ran for his life and was never seen again. Little Red Riding Hood learned her lesson, and she never, ever talked to strangers again. The end.
Today we will talk about little little girl using a reading hood. We will talk about generic structure, language feature, and other. The first speaker is Gias Nurholis. Second speaker is Anissa Retno Sapitri. The third speaker is Pebi Amelinia Pajar, and will be closed with Toha Aksin Badutama. Maybe enough from me. Thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay everyone, my name is Giaswami Nurholis and I'll explain about the language features of Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood is a fairy tale, and fairy tales is one type of narrative text. Therefore, the language features of Little Red Riding Hood are the same as narrative text. So, what are the language features of Little Red Riding Hood? The first, using past tense. For example, in the beginning of Little Red Riding Hood video, did you hear what storyteller said? Yeah, that's true. He said, once upon a time, there was a little girl. I think you already know which simple past tense is. Yeah, the simple past tense is there was a little girl. Second is using action verb. An action verb is a type of verb that describes physical or mental action. For example, he jumped out of the bed. Could you identify where the action verb is? Yeah, the action verb is jumped. Then the third is using a direct speech. For example, when Little Red Riding Hood's mother said, "Grandma isn't feeling very well." And fourth is using conjunction. For example, but, and, when, and so on. The last is using epithet. For example, Little Red Riding Hood, Big Bad Wolf, and the Sneaky Wolf. So that's all from me. Thanks for your nice attention.
And I want to present about generic structure of Little Red Riding Hood. Orientation is Little Red Riding Hood lived in the wood with her mother. One day she went to see her granny. She had a nice cake in her basket. On her way, she met a wolf. "Hello," said the wolf. "What are you going?" "I'm going to see my grandmother. She lives in a house behind two trees." And complication is the wolf ran to Granny's house and ate Granny up. He got into Granny's bed. Little Red Riding Hood reached the house. She looked at the wolf. "Granny, what pig is you have?" "All better to see you with," said the wolf. "Granny, what big ear you have?" "All the better to hear you with," said the wolf. "Granny, what big nose you have?" "All the better to smell you with," said the wolf. And the resolution is, a woodcutter was in the wood. He heard a loud scream and ran to the house. The woodcutter hit the wolf over the head. The wolf opened his mouth wide shut and Granny jumped out. The last is coda. Is the wolf ran away, and Little Red Riding Hood never saw the wolf again.
Hello, I'm Baby. I wanna just tell you about the Little Red Riding Hood movie's element. In the movie's element, there are setting, place, character, plot, and the message. And the Little Red Riding Hood is the story's fiction movie. And the setting place of this movie is Little Red Riding Hood house, the wood or forest, the grandmother house. And the character of this movie are Little Red Riding Hood, Mother, Grandmother, Wolf, and Huntsman. And the plot of Little Red Riding Hood is a story is all about the sequence of events. One day, Little Red Riding Hood visit in Grandma's house because her is sick. And the halfway, Little Red meet the wolf, and the wolf is disturb her. And then the wolf is go away in the grandma's house, and they discuss like grandmother. And the Little Red Riding Hood scream, and then the huntsman arrived to help her, and grandmother. Then huntsman catch the bad wolf. And the message of the movies is be careful when walk south in the forest, and obey your parents' order and the saving each other. Thank you.
Okay everyone, that's all from us. Thank you for watching and sorry for any mistake. And last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.